And we have breaking news on that impeachment inquiry coming to us out of Washington, where we are just learning that House Democrats are honing in on a framework for their impeachment case against President Trump. NBC News correspondent Heidi Przybyla joins me now with more. I know you have been intensively working this story for some time now. What can you tell us?
That's right, Chris. Democrats who are very close to the process and individuals involved tell me that they are really narrowing the case on this impeachment framework to a simple abuse of power case against the president. Chris, this is the framework under which everything that the president has done with regards to Ukraine falls under, whether it is pushing out the ambassador, Marie Yovanovitch, or it is the president's phone call or the quid pro quo on the military aid. This is the framework that they plan to use. Now, it's important to note, Chris, that no actual drafting of the article has begun, that the legal discussions are ongoing, and that they are still collecting all of the evidence. However, in speaking with constitutional experts, Chris, I am told that this is also likely to be the impeachment vehicle because if you look at history, this is the same way that they drew up the case against Richard Nixon. There were 3 articles of impeachment for abuse of power, for contempt of Congress, and obstruction. What is still up in the air at this point is not this overall umbrella of abuse of power, but the obstruction argument. The individuals who I spoke with, Chris, believe that they have a very powerful case on obstruction and intent to obstruct with that October 8th letter that came from White House counsel Pat Cipollone, in which he said that the White House would not be complying with any of the Ukraine investigation. However, there are other stakeholders in this process, Chris. There are a lot of committees that have been working for a long time on their oversight and investigations, and they, too, want to see their work reflected in this. However, it is the Speaker's opinion and those close to the process that this has to be very targeted. The overall point here and the takeaway, Chris, is that contrary to the Mueller investigation, where Democrats felt they had very compelling evidence, but the narrative got too fuzzed up. It was hard to communicate to the American people. They want to keep this very simple.
So very simple means Ukraine, only Ukraine, nothing else.
At this point, under that abuse of power umbrella, Ukraine and nothing else. The question right now is on the obstruction and whether they also bring in the Mueller charges. They have not ruled out a 3rd article. There is still a heated debate within the caucus on whether some of these other investigations, such as on the emoluments clause and whether the president is using the office to benefit personally, should go into there. But the main messaging and the narrative and the overarching article that they are discussing now on abuse of power, that is very much in play and very much formulated. These other debates are still taking place. I believe the Speaker wants to show that she is taking in all input from all different members. But they're also very, very concerned about having this stray very much beyond Ukraine, and therefore, as to abuse of power right now, it really is just Ukraine. And you can see that also in a polling memo, Chris, that went out this past week from Cheri Bustos, who is in charge of the House Democrats' reelection efforts. And they actually polled this already in battleground districts. In 57 battleground districts, a majority of individuals they found believe this. They believe that it is either, and I'm going to read to you the exact language, very or totally convincing that Trump is, quote, abusing his authority and that lawmakers need to, quote, uphold the rule of law. Therefore, even in that memo, abuse of power, again, is the very first bullet in terms of the talking points that have been distributed to the entire Democratic caucus.
So let me make sure I understand this, because if the idea is that they're looking at this polling and people agree with the basic premise, and Nancy Pelosi has been incredibly consistent on this, right? She has said from the beginning, we have to keep this clear, sharp, and focused. It has to be a case that we can make simply and clearly to the American people. While I understand the polling that Cheri Bustos did, there's another new New York Times Siena College survey that also looked at 6 key battleground states and found that a majority of registered voters in Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin support the impeachment inquiry 50 to 45%. But at the same time, it finds those same voters opposed to removing Trump from office are 49% as opposed to 43%. How much are they depending on the politics of this, the American people, what they believe that they can sell, and in particular, sell in battleground states?
It is very important, Chris, that you made that distinction because, of course, this internal polling is consistent with that because it's showing that people believe that what the president was engaged in was wrong. But then when you ask them, should he therefore be impeached, you see the level of support go down. And so the calculus by the speaker and by Democrats who are running these investigations are that we're in the beginning stages of this process. And also, according to my reporting, Chris, what is going to happen is that while they're conducting a very private deposition process right now where they believe they're collecting the best evidence, the next phase of this will be where transcripts are released. The public will have access to more information. You will see people testify, and they will also point you to some of the movement that we have seen among, for instance, moderate Republicans like Francis Rooney, who over the weekend said, look, I have to, at the end, answer to my grandchildren. I'm going to be looking at them a lot longer than I'm going to be looking at the people around here. That was in response to Mick Mulvaney essentially acknowledging in the White House briefing room that there was a quid pro quo. So, yes, Chris, to answer your question, they're very much banking that those numbers will begin to move. And they have got to also be reaching out to people like Rooney, like Will Hurd in Texas, like some of these retiring moderate Republicans, so that this really can be seen as a bipartisan process.
Heidi Prisbala with the remarkable reporting that is just posted on NBCnews.com. Heidi, thank you for that.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.